Good afternoon, loyal fans of 101 Part-Time Jobs podcast. My name's Giles Bidder, and I speak to bands about what they get up to when they're not on tour to support themselves financially, but also to see what's kept them ticking along. We've got a great couple of episodes coming up in the next few months. A Punk Rock Summer is the series I've called it, where I'm speaking to people from punk rock. And now is Dylan Slocum from Spanish Love Songs, who I had no idea played First Division baseball and then became an assistant to a Hollywood screenwriter. So, loads of great stuff to unpack here. I'm a big fan of Spanish Love Songs. It was awesome that Dylan was up for coming on here. And thank you for listening. If you haven't already, you should subscribe. You should review it. East London's Signature Brew have been brewing music-inspired beers and supporting live music since 2011. You may know them from their collaboration beers with the likes of Mastodon, Idols, Slaves, and most recently Sports Team. And 101 Part-Time Jobs listeners, that is you, you can all get 10% off their beers, any of their beers, by visiting their website, signaturebrew.co.uk, and using the code 101podcast. That's all capitals. If there's a time to be ordering beers straight to your door, it's now, and you can get money off by doing that. So enjoy yourself. I'll shut up already. This is Dylan Slocum from Spanish Love Songs.
You know the truth in what they say. The world's gonna kick you either way.
So how you doing, Dylan? What's going on?
Good. Not a whole lot, man. Just working, doing our own podcast for that Patreon.
Right, I saw that. I saw the Nickelback cover.
Yeah, the Nickelback cover. The cover that'll forever haunt me.
I mean, I saw that and I thought, you know, you got to give the fans what they want.
Well, I put it up as a joke. So the band never sent me any songs that they wanted to cover. So I was like, okay, well, let's put some stuff up. And I was like, let's get a general vibe on how everybody's going to be, how this is going to go. You know what I mean? And, yeah, I think people are, I'm going to turn it myself up just a little bit. I think people are a little crazy and like it's the internet. So they were like, fuck yeah, Nickelback, baby.
So your new record, obviously, Brave Faces, Everyone, came out this year. Did the release of that record change anything for you on a sort of financial basis? Was there more money coming in, I suppose?
I mean, there should have been. I mean, the album came out right before COVID shut the world down.
Yeah.
So we had all lost our jobs except for Ruben, and we could see the future where we could possibly be, paying the bills very minimally, but still have the ability. And it was feeling good. And then,
I imagine
March, everything shuts down and it's like, all right, well, all those plans that you made, bye.
And of course, you're a band. You make money from touring, selling T-shirts, that kind of thing.
Oh, that's the only way we make money. We don't make it any. I mean, we get minimal streaming money, and we're doing this Patreon thing now. So we're just trying to find a way to survive without being able to sell T-shirts to people directly.
I feel like it's one thing that people, quote marks, in the industry only really talk about or fully understand, but publishing.
Yeah.
Do you have a publisher?
Yeah. We work with a Rough Trade.
Cool.
They're great. Yeah, they're great. We were psyched. We were about to have a song in a TV show right before the shutdown, and then production of that shut down because of the. So,
what TV show was it?
I don't know if I can say, but it was like some crime drama. That we were like, the deal was in the midst of being done, and it was like our first time getting paid for something like that, and it was great. Yeah. And that's where those nice royalties come back to us, and then everything. I haven't heard any. It could still be in the works. I haven't heard anything.
Well, it's an interesting topic. I was speaking with a friend today or yesterday about how you see a band that you know of get an advert, and you're like, oh, they must be making loads of money. Do you think that's the case?
I think it depends on what company it's for or what it's for. This, full disclosure on our end, the deal for the TV wasn't mind blowing, but it was more than a indie punk band is used to getting.
Yeah. Well, of course. I mean, there's £1,000 in real a normal job is an okay amount, but for then an indie punk band, that's a lot.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's double standards there, massively.
Yeah, I mean, we were looking like that deal was coming in, and with how our splits break down on the publishing side, it was like, oh, well, rent is covered. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, which for most people is like it's like the bare bones of living, right?
Yeah, and if rent, and I mean, the great thing is like most of us don't have rent right now because we were on tour, and so we like we were supposed to be touring from like January when we did the Menzo's tour through to like we had dates booked through the beginning of next year with like 2 to 3 weeks off in between each tour. So we all gave up our apartments. It was like we went home, and now Meredith and I are at her parents' house. Kyle's at his grandma's house. Ruben's at his parents' house. Trevor's at his mom's house. And we're just like, well, we can't really afford to move because we don't have any income coming in, and unemployment is like moderately helpful right now. But it also took like Meredith and I just started getting it, and we applied as soon as we got home. You know what I mean? So it's been a month and a half trying to get some sort of help from the government.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you say, you're touring basically 300 days plus a year, that just puts the quivers in me. That's so terrifying.
I mean, we've never done it. I think the most we've ever done was like 100 something, and it was definitely going to be exhausting, but it was the only way forward. You know what I mean? Like that was the option, or it was because we all like by losing our job, it was like, well, you either go find another job who probably won't let you tour this much, or you tour as much as you can until you reach the point where you don't have to tour as much. Like, I think that's when we first started working with our managers, they were like, yeah, our main goal is so you don't have to tour that much, but we got to get you there. And then you can be more selective and, play fewer shows for more money and play bigger shows, I guess is, the dream. And they say that like it's like the easiest thing to do, and it's impossibly difficult. But we were on a pretty good path, and I mean, we still are. The thing with the shutdown is that like it shuts down everybody, so it's not like we're suddenly like we're the only ones struggling. So it's hard to be like, damn it, this is so difficult when there's people who aren't us who are having a much harder time.
Touring is still the sort of best route to share your music, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially the music that we play, the
punk rock variety.
Yeah. The uncool variety. I'm sure if you were like making SoundCloud mixtapes, you know what I mean? Or like making something cool and not original. I mean, everything's original, but doing something that kids liked, there might, the internet would probably be a good way to do it. Like, look at Lil Nas X, you know what I mean? There's no way he could reach that many people if he was just touring. But for what we do, I think touring is the absolute best way. Just the amount of people on the Menzingers and the Wonder Years tours who were like, whoa, I didn't listen to your band until I saw you were on this tour, and now I love you guys, is like, well, that's why we're doing it. That's the whole reason, because it's about just reaching as many people as you possibly can.
The Wonder Years and the Menzingers are just, I feel, that the two perfect bands for Spanish love songs to tour with.
Oh, absolutely. They're also the two bands we get accused of sounding the most like. So it was great. No, I mean, we love both those bands and have for a very long time. And so when they asked us if we wanted to go out on those tours back to back to launch the new album, it was like, yep, that's perfect. That's, done. There's the first half of our year.
And you mentioned you got a manager. How long have you had a manager?
We started working with them. It's like a partnership. We started working with them right before we signed with Pure Noise, so like January of 2019. So
I just saw Pure Noise signed Bouncing Souls for the new record.
Yeah.
That's cool. How does that feel to be label mates with Bouncing Souls?
It's awesome. We share the same management. So
you automatically get each other's phone numbers.
Yeah, exactly. No, like we got to play Stoke for Summer last year with them, and they're just the nicest dudes. And yeah, it was such a fun event, and just like getting to hang out with them and Hot Water Music as much as we have over the last like year has been just mind blowing. And that's not like, it's not like a cool name drop, but it was like, playing those shows and getting to know those guys is incredible, because those are, you know what I mean? Those are bands you grew up listening to, and you're just like, holy shit. Like Chuck Reagan just gave me a high five when I came off stage. You know what I mean?
Were there any things that surprised you that you were like, I didn't expect that to be like that?
No, I mean, they're pretty well-oiled machines at this point. You know what I mean? And we are definitely aware of who we are when we're on tour, which is, despite all of us being late 20s, early 30s, we're still like the young kids at any tour because we're the newer band, so we tend to just like shut up and stay in our corner and try not to get in anybody's way. You know what I mean?
It's funny when you read about bands like, I don't know, the Libertines spring to mind, because I guess they're just an obvious, just such an obvious one, where like there is that kind of cliche of the youngest being the most bratty.
Oh yeah, no, we would never in a million years do that. That like
you're the antidote.
Yeah, we're the anti-libertines. I remember the Hot Water Music guys were talking to our booking agent when we were over there, and they were like, "Yeah, Spanish love songs is great. They're so quiet and shy. Like, what's up with that?" And he had to explain to them like, "Oh no, they just don't want to piss you off. Like, it's your show; They want to stay out of your way." And I think people will respect us for that. Also, it leads to like not. I don't know. I don't like being hated by the touring party. So,
really,
and I'm already enough to handle a lot of times. Just like I'm just like a general dad on the road. I'm just like, with my own band. So I try like I don't want other bands to already hate me, or like I feel like if you hold back and you stay in your lane and do your thing, when the time comes where you need to like voice your opinion or point out a problem, people are more likely to listen to you than if you were just a jackass the entire tour. Like I can be cool with Hot Water's tour manager the entire tour, and then when they see me blowing up on somebody in Germany for trying to charge us a merch cut, like they can smile and nod and be like, I don't know, while I'm just shouting at this person for stealing our livelihood.
So you're pretty good at that. You're pretty good at self-management. And I mean, over the years, I've really realized that, the bands that do the best are the bands that treat it like a job that it is. It's like serious fun, I suppose.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that also came from, I started this band when I was 26 and I'm 32 now. So like, we don't have time to not treat it like a job. It is it's a very fun job, but we've always treated it. And it also stems from, Kyle works in a recording studio. I worked in Hollywood. Meredith worked in like we all worked in these kind of industries that were similar to music, fashion or film or music itself, where it's very serious art and full of a lot of jackasses. So it's like, I think we were kind of used to navigating that. And so we knew what we wanted to do with our own type of projects.
That's definitely something that comes up with me. I work at a radio station, and I see myself as definitely the youngers, in the youngers crew. Yeah. And so many of the people that respected and high up and have been doing this so many times, they do not suffer fools, Oh yeah. And I feel like it's something that I have to learn at some point.
Yeah. You don't want to work with, suffering fools is a great way to put it. I remember I worked with a guy who was like, yeah, my number one rule of working on a film set is I don't work with assholes. And I was like, oh, well, cool. Let's figure out how to not get on that guy's bad side then, because then you won't be working. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think we're as much of an asshole as I can be. We try to operate on that same kind of principle of like doing our job, show up, do your job, act like you've been there before, I think is something I say a lot. Don't act like the amateur if you don't want to be seen like an amateur. Even if you don't know what you're doing, just shut up and watch somebody and you'll learn how to do it.
Absolutely. And this has come up a few times in this podcast, just being perceptive.
Yeah. I mean, like I remember our early shows when we didn't know how a sound check properly ran. You know what I mean? When you have like the first time you have a monitor engineer and a front of house engineer, you're like, whoa, there's two of you. You know what I mean? And you can multitask. And I remember the first time we did that, we were like, oh shit. And you vaguely remember seeing other people do it and you're like, oh, I think this is what we do. And you just, by like day two, you're like, okay, this is how it runs. Perfect. Like, that's how you learn things. Nobody's going to sit you down and be like, here's a book on how to be a touring musician.
It's true. And, there was nothing like this that I saw growing up. Specialist Subjects Records here have made like a DIY how to be a band zine. which I need to get. But I guess the internet is helping, offering some kind of advice nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that's cool. The special subject into that. I didn't know that. Yeah, that would have been incredibly helpful. But then again, like, I think it depends on what age you're doing it at too. I feel like if I was like a 19-year-old DIY kid, yeah, it'd be a lot different than what I am now. But also, if I was 19, would I be listening to somebody telling me how to do it? Or to be like, fuck you, I know what I'm doing.
What bands did you base upon, your ideals?
How to be a band.
Yeah, your practices.
Damn, that's good. I feel like a lot of the bands I loved were very dysfunctional and awful people. So, you know what I mean?
It's interesting reading about Fucked Up. I mean, obviously the thing is they hate each other. I'm sure they don't actually hate each other, but it's interesting reading about that.
What about Fucked Up?
Like, they just don't really like each other.
Oh, I think that's every band. I think if you're in a band long enough, you're absolutely going to hate everyone in your band. Like, I think it's inevitable. And I mean, there's days where we don't get along, and you just kind of suck it up and deal with it, and
how do you deal with it? Because I get it. It's like in any relationship, sometimes there are days where you're like, am I crazy? Are they crazy? But I mean, do you have any coping mechanisms? Do you make sure you talk about things?
I try to be upfront with people. I try to not let people be passive aggressive with me. But oftentimes that leads to some very uncomfortable situations, or very rarely, like voice raising, and kind of trying to put people, not just me, but like people trying to put other people in their perceived place, which is probably not a good thing to be doing. But I also think that, like, there's a dynamic to every band that I wouldn't want to judge or comment on. You know what I mean? So, like, Fucked Up might all hate each other, but they might have a dynamic where that needs to exist. I'm not sure. We played with them at that Stoke for the Summer, and they all seemed, with Fucked Up, friendly with each other. But I'm sure that we all seemed friendly with each other too. And you know what I mean? It's like a funny thing.
I was pretty guilty when Great Cynics was touring. If we were having a bad time, and towards the end we were, I was guilty of being like, "Oh, we're best friends, everybody," like faking it.
I think I saw you on one of your last tours.
Yeah,
that's really funny. I think that's the first time
we're getting really. I think that time was funny. That was in France. That was the blowout period.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I don't think we try to put on that brave of a face, for pun intended.
Yeah,
I think that we just don't talk to each other. Like, if you hang out with us at a show, you'll notice how the band breaks off at different times. And you're like, oh, okay, that's how it goes. And that's fine. That's just normal friendship. And you know what I mean? Some days, certain people are getting along, and other days they're not. And I think it also depends on, like, who drank too much last night, or who stayed out too late, or who got woken up because somebody stayed out too late, or who's just having a bad day. You know what I mean?
Getting wasted doesn't help.
Oh, absolutely not. I've largely stopped drinking on tour, mostly because I can't sing as much if I'm drinking every night and staying up late. And like, one of the worst blowouts that our band ever had was, like, I lost my voice. And I wasn't even drinking that much, but somebody said something about, like, well, this is why you can't stay up, fucking drink all night, blah, blah, blah. And I, like, lost it on them. And I was like, I'm not going to repeat it, but it was a very,
have you got a temper?
I don't have a, how do I phrase this? I don't have a temper, but I also will reach a point where I'm just like, nope, we're done. We're going to do this now. I'm done, like, letting it stew. You know what I mean? But
absolutely.
I try, like, I don't want to be the asshole. I don't want to be that guy who's the front man in a band who people are like, yeah, and he's also an asshole, and, treats it like a dictatorship.
Totally. But by thinking like that, you're becoming a victim of your own identity. The front person of a band,
Yeah. I mean, that's probably fair. It's tough.
It's
a weird situation. It's a weird situation because a lot of times, it's, in that case in particular, it was tough because on the flip side, so I got accused of staying out too late or drinking or saying, doing whatever. And that's why I lost my voice and we couldn't play. But then there's been other nights where somebody will get mad because like I'll walk straight into the Airbnb or hotel or something and I will take the bed. And then somebody will be like, oh, you just think you get the bed? And I'll be like, well, yeah, because if I can't fucking sing, we're not playing. So it's like, it's the flip side of both ways. So I think it's just a mess. It's always a mess. It's not even a mess. We call it a circus. You know what I mean? It's the downfalls of being on the road with somebody who, you just get on each other's nerves, and that's fine. That's life. I don't expect to be friends with like good, deep friends and not argue with all of my coworkers at a regular job. So why would it be any different at this job where it's a lot more intense too?
Right. I feel so many bands are kind of on this knife edge constantly.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's just how it is. I don't know how you can. I look at bands who are like, yeah, we're all best friends. And I'm like, but are you? Because, you'll say you're all best friends, but then like midway through another set, one of you will come in and talk shit on the other one for what they're doing. And I just recognize it as like, oh yeah, we're all trash people who are hating on the people we work with. And that's fine. That's the nature of touring so much.
Yeah. So what were you doing in Hollywood?
I worked for a director. I was his assistant for many, many years.
A director we would have heard of?
Yeah, his name's Jeff Wadlow. He directed, what was his most recent movie was the Fantasy Island reboot for Blumhouse. Before that, we did Truth or Dare. He directed Kick-Ass 2, like right before I joined on with him. So he's done some bigger stuff.
How did you get into that?
When I was an undergrad, I was a writing major, and I was working on like a journalism specialty, and I had a meeting with my journalism professor, and this was like 2010. So this is like when old media was kind of crumbling. And she like sat me down and was like, don't go into journalism. Don't do it. You'll waste your life. Don't hurt yourself this way. And I was like, at the time I should have realized it was like she just got fired from the LA Times and you know what I mean? Stuff like this. And I should have like taken that with a grain of salt, but also I think she was right. I think she saved me from a lot of things. Like I have friends who came out of that same program and now write, now they're writing in really cool jobs, but for the early years of their career, they were like having to write clickbait headlines and you know what I mean? Trying to get clicks.
Working for free.
Yeah. Working for very little money. So I think I dodged that bullet, but I pivoted and went into screenwriting. And so after that, I went to film school in LA. And then from there, as part of that, like met my boss and then got the job and kind of worked for him while trying to, write screenplays.
That's brilliant. That's so cool. I mean, screenwriting is, we're of the generation of Seth Rogen. Hearing him talk about Superbad and the fact he started writing it when he was 15, there must be hundreds of thousands of kids or adults around the world wanting to break into that industry.
Oh, absolutely. It's, I would say, tougher than the music industry. It sucks. It's, it was weird. I spent a good decade of my life on it.
Wow.
Not quite a decade, like 8 years in LA.
And so did that start when you were in high school?
I had toyed around with it in high school. I was an athlete in high school, so I played baseball. And so I got a scholarship to play in college. So like that kind of...
No way.
That kind of took up most of my energy. But I was always writing or playing music on the side, but I never really gave them a fair shake because like those seemed like the pipe dream type of things. Like, what do you mean you want to play in a band? That's dumb. You're never going to make money. Like you're never going to do anything with it. And like baseball, because you've met me. I'm like 6'6", giant man, like could throw a ball really hard. Baseball was an attainable goal. So that was where most of my energy went. And so, I went to college and I blew out my knee and I stopped because I didn't want to do it anymore. Cause it was me. Division I baseball is maybe the worst job I've ever had. So
you're getting paid to play baseball?
Absolutely not. That's the joke. Is like, it's a full-time job that you don't make any money on. I mean, I guess I got paid in my tuition, but like even that wasn't enough, for what we were doing. So it was exhausting, like just absolute, like life wrecking tough unless you love what you're doing. And it turned out that like that showed me I didn't love baseball that much. Like I was just decent at it. So I got out of that after my freshman year. And so, yeah, very quickly pivoted into like, oh, I like writing and I like screenwriting and, you know, I like all forms of writing. So maybe I'll just do this writing major. And that kind of turned into everything else.
Just to track back on the getting a scholarship. So we don't have this in England, but we hear a lot about it in America, you know, college baseball where it's televised and stuff, you know, and TV shows such as Community has taught me that people get scholarships to play sports at university or college.
Well, you guys don't need scholarships because you guys have free university.
Scotland's free. England's very fucking expensive.
Very expensive compared to what? Sorry, I didn't mean free. I meant cheaper than us. What's an average year at a university in England?
It's $9,000 a year. Let me just check that because I went to uni, and I just know I won't pay it back because I'll never make enough money.
Have I been lied to my whole life? I thought your guys' was cheaper than ours.
No, it's $9,000 a year for university now
for tuition, just tuition.
Yeah, that's tuition. Yeah, and then after that, there's student loans, not grants. So you have to pay them back.
Yeah.
And then that's it for most people. Yeah, but I mean, scholarships do exist.
Oh, I've been lied to for so long. Everybody told me your guys' university was cheap, and I just took it at face value.
It changed in 2000 and I want to say in 2012.
Well, that explains. I graduated. Yeah. I graduated college in 2010, so I haven't paid attention to anything since.
So how much was your yearly fee?
Let's see. Where I played baseball was a private school, so tuition there was $25,000 a year.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and then I went to a public university after baseball, and my tuition was $10,000 a year, but it was going up at the time, and that was just tuition. That wasn't living or books or any of that stuff.
So when you got handpicked to play baseball, that was like, I imagine your parents or your family were very excited about that.
Oh, they were thrilled. That was the only way I was going to get to go to college. You know what I mean? That was the goal since I was 12 was you're going to community college unless you get a scholarship to go to an expensive college.
And was that baseball was going to be a job?
Yeah. I mean, I largely enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. But then you get to that next level, you know, much like being in a band, as you slowly get to the higher levels of being in a band, you realize like some things are less and less fun. But I would say that, you know, being in a band is a little bit more fulfilling to the ego. I don't know. Baseball was pretty fulfilling too. It was just a weird divergence in my life.
Even if you weren't loving it, it must have been hard to put your bat down.
You know, at the time it wasn't, because I was finally able to go play in bands. I was pretty fed up with it because that whole year it was like get up at 6 a.m., go to weights, you know, then go to class from 8 to 11 or 8 to noon. And I'm like falling asleep by the end of that last class.
And those classes were academic classes.
Oh yeah. And like, I was a pretty good student, so they were pretty rigorous classes. And then, I'm like falling asleep by the end of the last class, then go eat a quick lunch and then go to the field until about 10 or 11 p.m., which was actually like, we were practicing more than we were legally allowed to, but there was ways around it that the coaches found. So it was like the craziest job that I was like, I didn't sign up for this. You know what I mean? I like school and I like baseball, but I don't like him in this level of combination.
One thing I find interesting about a lot of, I'm into cricket. And one thing I really notice about cricket players is that they are conditioned to play cricket. You know what I mean? And listen to
absolutely.
coaches.
Yeah, no, baseball's the same way. You know what I mean? You have to breathe it and dream about it, and you know what I mean? And listen to what you're told.
People tell you.
Do what you're told. Show up where you know what I mean? Show up where you're told to be at this time. And if I think one of the things that I struggled the most with was that if somebody else fucked up, I got punished because it was like a team sport.
In what way?
So it was like, oh, that guy was slacking off and showed up late to practice, or he did this in a game that was a bonehead move. So now we're all running because of him. This is your punishment.
Kind of hazing. Move.
It's not, but it's coming from the coaches. So it's not even hazing. It's like to shame that person for failing. You know what I mean? And baseball's a sport of failure. So whenever like, I don't know. I hate that kind of military mentality. It's why I quit playing American football after my freshman year of high school, because Again, I was like a big guy. I should, natural that I would play football. And I showed up and they're like just yelling at you and running you into the ground and like, that player showed up 30 seconds late to the field and he didn't hustle. So now we're all going to run for an hour. And you're just like, this is stupid. This doesn't make you a better person.
Yeah. Or a better player.
I mean, you can maybe argue that it's making you a more conditioned player, but like at what cost? Because I hated my coaches. I actually quit the football team. I didn't even finish the season. I quit like a third of the way through the season. And my coach like called me a quitter to everybody. And I was like, that's fine. That's cool. You suck, dude. Yeah. Yeah. It's weird, man.
So then you got into writing.
Yes.
How was that transition?
It was kind of cool. I like most things in my life, it was pretty impulsive. So when I was playing baseball, and then when right after I finished, I was actually just a regular English major, and I always expected that I was going to become like an academic. I was going to be a professor, teach writing 101, or like, you know what I mean, like composition classes and teach about books, you know what I mean, stuff like that. And I was in a class my junior year, like the first quarter of my junior year, and it was a Hemingway and Fitzgerald class, like historically two of my favorite writers up to that point. I was a young middle class white kid. Like Hemingway and Fitzgerald were like the dudes,
Right.
And I remember being in this class where we had just read The Great Gatsby, and I was like, oh hell yeah, The Great Gatsby. The first time I'll be doing like a very critical upper division reading of one of my favorite books ever. And we spent an entire class talking about the use of the color yellow in the book. And it was like an hour and a half lecture on the use of yellow in The Great Gatsby. And I was just like, oh, this is fucking pointless.
Oh, fuck off.
Criticism is pointless. And I was like, why would I want to be the person who talks about somebody else's book instead of just writing the damn book? You know what I mean? And so I went that day to the whatever office and changed my major to writing without it having taken a single writing class at the school. And I was like, this is what I'm doing now. And thankfully it was fine. It was good.
So you were writing creatively kind of from that moment, or were you already writing creatively in your free time?
Not as much as I should have been. It was something I dabbled in, and that was kind of the commitment to being kind of a creative writer. I was like 20, almost 21. Yeah, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and then I figured it out. And even then, it was like dabbling in, like, because with the majors, like you take a creative writing class, you take a fiction class and a nonfiction class and a poetry class, and then you kind of pick, other things you want to do. And so I was bouncing around a lot until I graduated, and then kind of went into screenwriting because it was the one that fit the most, and it was also the one, I'm from Southern California, and so it was easy to move to Hollywood. And then it was kind of also the one that had the allure of like, oh, and it pays well if you can make it, which is a bad thing to chase.
How do you look back at that period of time moving to Hollywood?
I mean, now I look back at it as, I'm happy because it led me to my band and to the people I know and the people I've dated and stuff like that. But it was also stupid because I could have just been playing music the whole time. But I look at it as like a necessary part of the journey to get to like what I can do now. I couldn't do that when I was 21, 22, but also it would have been cool if I could have.
I think there's always that thing, you should have written more songs. You could have spent more time. You shouldn't have spent that night going out late.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's always something to look back and regret, but no, it was good. It was fun. I mean, spending your early and mid and late 20s in Los Angeles can be fun if you let it be.
How did you meet your director then?
He went to the same film school program that I went to, but like a decade before. And so he sent an email to the office, like, I'm looking for a new assistant. And I applied, and we kind of, took it from there. I had an interview with him, and then weirdly, my girlfriend at the time also interviewed for the same job. And that was funny because like we had back-to-back interviews at his house, and we just waited in the car for each other. And then, it was weird. And then, I got the job and she didn't. I'm sure she was fine with it, or not. It doesn't matter. I don't know. I could see why my 35-year-old like male director wanted like a young bro to come work for him. Not that I was a young bro, but you know what I mean. I don't know. She was probably more She was more qualified on the film side of things than me, but I was more qualified on the like assistant and writer's assistant side of things, just like with the type of personality I have. You know what I mean? I wasn't
So what
like,
does a writer's assistant do?
oh man, a lot. I mean, early on, a lot of note taking, a lot of organization, a lot of like scheduling, like making sure that he gets to the meetings that he needs to get to when he needs to get to them. Then later on, it becomes stuff like editing or, you know, helping write certain things for no credit. And that's a lot of what it is you get a lot of creditless work that you do.
Yeah.
You know, I've definitely written some things that, you know, ended up going, you know, in certain projects. I'm actually trying to think. I don't think anything that's gotten made has anything I've done other than like minor, you know, minor fixes. But yeah, it's a good thing. It's like a good way to kind of learn what to do and like learn. I'm so grateful to know how a movie gets made. I mean, it's ruined.
Did he treat you well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's the best guy.
So there wasn't any of this kind of like you're like a lower level piece of shit kind of vibe.
No, not from him at all. I mean, like if you're getting real about it, like there's that level when, you know, both the paychecks come to me when we're on set. So then I see what he makes and I see what I make. So like that makes me feel like a piece of shit. But no, he was great. He was a great boss. And I was doing the band like most of the time I worked for him. And so there'd be months where I'm like, I'm going to be on tour, but I got you on email. And he was like, all right, that's fine. So
Giant Sings the Blues came out in 2015.
Yes.
What year is this that you?
I started working for him at the end of 2014.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the band was kind of a hobby, but also kind of this kind of social larger thing.
Yeah. It was definitely a hobby at the time. So we put out Giant in 2015. We did our first tour with the Flatliners at the end, like mid-end of 2015, like September.
Your first tour was with the Flatliners?
Yeah. Because we were just a local band who didn't do anything. You know what I mean? We're kind of weekend warriors.
That's a good tour.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't that many dates. It was like a week or, a week and a half.
But still, you know how punk rock works. If you find out bands by seeing the tour, the support tour. Supporting bands.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So
do you remember how that came about, that tour?
We had put out the album and our friend Sarah Litt had discovered it and put it on her like music blog, and she was an assistant to a booking agent, and she showed it to him and he was like, holy crap. And he was the booking agent for the Flatliners. And so they needed somebody for like, a few dates after the Fat Records tour. And we were like, okay, yeah, we'll do it. You know what I mean? And I'm sure it was because, we were young and took very little money and we were available. And I mean, Adam is like one of our really good friends. And yeah, it was great. But, it was, that was our first tour. It was our first experience like on the road with this band too.
And the Flatliners, they've been going for a long time. They've got a legacy,
Oh yeah, absolutely. And just the nicest guys and like a perfect kind of first tour. And so we did that tour, and then I came home. Like, while I was on that tour, I got a call from my boss saying, hey, we have a movie that's shooting in Atlanta and the Dominican Republic for the next 5 months. And then we're going to shoot a movie in London right after that. And he's like, you good? And I was like, sure, because this band is a hobby. So yeah, I like immediately after that tour went to Atlanta from like mid-September 2015. And then I wrapped in the Dominican Republic in February of 2016. And so,
wow.
Yeah. And so the band was just on hold. We had to cancel some dates and stuff like that. And so the band was on hold, and I wrote most of Schmaltz while I was in Atlanta. And then thankfully that London movie got canceled because it didn't get canceled. He lost it because of some contractual stuff. And so I was supposed to go straight from the Dominican in mid-February, and by March, and then do post on the movie in New York City, and then by like April go straight to London and then Bulgaria until like July. So I think that would have killed the band if I had done that. So I was in Atlanta from September to December, and then had 2 weeks off for Christmas, and then went to the Dominican until mid-February.
Why were you in Atlanta?
Just because there's production rebates there. Same reason with the Dominican. There's a huge film industry in Atlanta because the state of Georgia pays you back a certain percentage of what you spend on certain things. So if you come and you spend, like, the easiest way of putting it is we spent $30 million in the state of Georgia, and they paid us back $9 million or something like that in rebates.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but it's bolstered like an entire industry there. So
Yeah.
it's cool. Atlanta is a very fun city, so I was lucky to get to live there for a little bit.
Yeah.
That movie was a rough, like, just the hours were rough. So I was in a terrible place working on it.
It really hit a nerve when you said, I'll do it because the band's a hobby. Have you struggled with that notion that you're like, oh, band's a hobby, but is it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we laugh because this was our hobby that has become our job without us realizing it. We would always joke like, oh yeah, the band's just that thing we do. And then all of a sudden we're on tour, and then all of a sudden, like, it's our entire life, and, I mean, I'm grateful it worked out that way because it let us know what's important to us. And, it also let us not have any expectations for anything. I think if you set out and you're like, I'm going to be in a band, and this band is going to be successful, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. If those things happen, that's awesome. You're very talented. Like, I'm so happy for you. If it doesn't happen, you're probably pretty disappointed. And so a lot of what I think we've been able to kind of manage is because we don't expect anything. So anything that happens to us is very cool.
I read I love this band called Violent Soho, who are from Australia.
Same.
Have you heard that new record? Everything
Yeah.
is okay.
It's so good. That's really funny. I didn't know you were violent. I have these very funny memories of listening. I would like put on my playlist of bands who, not like, it wasn't an intentional playlist, but it would bounce between bands who like didn't lose their accents when they sang. And
yeah.
You were on there as well.
Cheers, man.
Yeah, no. So it was really funny. Yeah. I have like these very great memories of like Violent Soho and Great Cynics albums and like,
Brilliant.
other bands of that ilk. That's
sick.
really funny. Yeah. No, that new album's great. Also on Pure Noise, which is, I remember the day that they announced it, I texted the head of our label and I was like, what the hell? Why didn't you tell me you were signing like one of the best bands?
Yeah. Well, so I interviewed James, the guitarist, for this podcast, and that's one thing that he said. He was like, we never expected anything. That's why they're always so stoked.
Yeah. I always got the vibe from them that they're just like a bunch of like, I could be way off base, but just the vibe they give in their music is like a bunch of stone skateboarders who are just like, oh, cool music.
That is it. I met them once and then spoken to James a lot, and he's just like, well, fucking yeah, man. I'm like, oh, so that's such a bad accent. But he's just like, well, it just is what it is.
Yeah, we just did our thing and it happened. And it's like, I mean, yeah, we pretty much operate on the same basis. It's gotten a little bit more serious because there's people who depend on us now. They don't depend on us financially yet because we haven't reached that point, but they're depending on us to not fuck it up so that they can, keep having a job.
Right. I mean, maybe this is a hard question, but how do you feel about that? The fact that people are relying on you and you're relying on them, and it's kind of this balancing act where there's some money, but there's not a lot of money.
I think it's fine. We don't work with people unless we trust them. Because we self-managed for a very long time. We self-booked for a very long time. And so we only kind of take people on when we see the need and when we want, I think it's part of it's a necessary evil of growth. But at the same time, we were really hesitant to take on a manager. We were really hesitant to work with like a bigger label. And I put them to work. You know what I mean? I'm like, if you are going to be a part of this, like you're going to work at the same level at which I have pushed for certain things. And so
you have to be brave to do that.
What, to put it on them?
I think you just have to be brave to be like, hey, if we're going to do this, you have to work for us. Because a lot of other bands, I know I did it at moments where I was like, oh yeah, cool. Just do whatever you want,
Oh yeah. No. But again, I think that comes with the type of person I am. Where, the person who's concerned about being an overbearing dictator who will also be an overbearing dictator at times. I'm just like, oh, you want to manage us? Okay, well, that's cool. You're going to how, and it's never like you work for me. It's like, how can we work together? But you're going to work just as hard as us because otherwise there's no point in us working together. You know what I mean? And thankfully our manager's bust their asses for us, and have helped us immensely with a lot of this stuff. And same thing with the label. The label was like, this is a much bigger contract and there's certain things that I don't love about it. But there's certain things that we couldn't get elsewhere. And it was like, you want to sign us. So like, how is this going to work with the way that we like to do things? And to their credit, they're like, you guys can go record your own album. You can produce your own album and we'll have input here and there. And like, it's been a really good kind of relationship. I make it sound way more adversarial than it is, but I think that comes from like my initial reaction to somebody trying to make money off of us when we don't make very much money off of us is to be like, well, what's your game?
Historically, that's happened to every band ever.
Absolutely. But thankfully they work their asses off for us. And I think that just comes from like trusting and picking the right people to work with. I think, not just blindly going into something, but really trying to vibe and make sure that that's somebody you want to get into bed with. And it's why I have such a problem with other people who make money off of us without any of my say. So like, venues that take merch cuts, it's like, well, this is how our organization does it. It's like, I don't give a shit. Like, I'm playing your venue. You don't take more money from us, and we're reaching the point where we're playing some places where it's like, no, that's just how it is. And it's one of the things that'll eternally drive me crazy because we can't change it. Like our band personally cannot change it. It would take somebody like, I don't know, who's a giant Lord. I don't know. Like Lord being like, I'm not going to pay merch cuts at this venue. Like that's how it would change. And even then it would probably not work. But like, we can't be like, we're not playing, like we're not giving you our merch cuts to this venue. Cause they'd be like, cool, go play somewhere else. And then it's like, oh no, they own 90% of the venues in the United States. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think anyone listening to this that's in a band coming up, that hearing you talk like that is inspirational, really.
Cool. I don't know. I mean,
it's just so easy to lay down.
Oh, I mean, at the end of the day, we still have like on these bigger tours we just did, there were days where we have to lay down because A, it's not our tour, and B, it's built into the contract, and C, it's either do it or don't play. But then it becomes a thing of like, I don't know, we go back to that kind of DIY ethos where it's like, okay, you're going to take a merch cut from us? Cool. Here's the most fake numbers you've ever seen. And they know you're lying to them. And they try to call you on it. And I get very blatant. I'm like, fucking, I dare you to call me on these numbers being fake. Like, I know how to lie. I will lie to you. Like, whether it's like, oh, get the merch loaded out of the venue as quickly as possible so they can't do a count out, or like, let's just dip out of here and leave them a note that says, here's our count,
How many shirts do you sell a show on a good night? A medium good night?
On a medium, how many shirts?
How many shirts?
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to look at a spreadsheet. I don't. We thankfully, Greg. We brought Greg along to do merch this last time, and so I saw the numbers at the end of the night, but I never saw the actual counts. I'd have to look at a spreadsheet, but it was growing. It was good. I mean, I'll say that like one of the things coming off because of COVID, people were like, oh, we'll just like, and we put up all the stuff on the merch store. And I was talking to Dan from the Wonders about this, and we're just like, yeah, the greatest month of our lives on our merch store is probably equal to like 1 or 2 nights at a show selling. So that's why it's been such a weird thing. Cause it's like, it's a Band-Aid, but it's a Band-Aid for a much bigger wound.
Yeah. So getting a manager, did that overlap with having a job? Because obviously your manager's going to have interest and make sure that you're not just going to.
Yeah. So they came on right around the time that I was going to lose my job, but everybody else still had their jobs. But no, they're very keen on us surviving so that we can keep making music so that, the benefits will be long-term instead of short-term, and I think that's a thing that a lot of people, like a lot of managers, a lot of good managers are smart about, is being like, well, we're not going to, there's been times where they're like, we're not going to commission you on this because why would we? It's going to cripple you. It's like, working with people who understand that they can like not make money off of you right away so that maybe 5 years from now they can make steady money off of you, I think is an important type of consideration to make. I don't know. That feels very insider, but I think that's, that's like a smart thing to think about is, working with people who aren't just seeing it for the money, but are seeing it for like a career growth type thing, which again, we're really lucky to have because actually, I don't think our managers have ever brought up money once to us. Like in that, you know what I mean? Even like with this pandemic, they weren't like, hey man, like where's that commission for this thing? You know what I mean? That shit never comes up.
And were you losing your job because you just weren't around?
Yeah, my boss, we had another movie that was going into production after Fantasy Island, which I missed Fantasy Island because what was I doing? I just didn't want to go to Fiji. It was going to be in Fiji for like 2 months. And we had like a tour or something. And I was like, I don't want to miss that to go to Fiji because again, spending 2 months making a movie in Fiji actually doesn't sound that interesting to me, which I know is spoiled, but it's, if you understood the work, like, so being a director's assistant is not even that. Let's take it bigger. Making a movie is not a glamorous thing. It's a very boring thing. I don't think a lot of people realize that. It's a lot of like, you'll spend an hour and a half setting up to get like a 30-second shot. And then you move everything again and do it again. So you're talking like, 12 to 16 hour days and as a director's assistant, it's even worse because if I'm creatively involved, like I love filmmaking when I'm the filmmaker because I'm creatively involved and I'm making choices. But like, it was like make sure my boss had coffee, and then stand behind him for 12 hours.
Yeah. So was that an awkward conversation you had with him?
No, I told him I wasn't gonna. I was very honest. I'm like, I'm probably not going to be around for that next movie either. And he had offered me a bigger job because he was getting like I don't even know if it went through, but he was negotiating what's called an overhead deal. So like he would be at a studio or at a production company and they'd give him an office and give him an assistant. And then everything he would work on would be for them to start. And so he was talking about possibly getting an overhead deal. That makes it sound like it's something you just choose to do. But he was figuring out if he was getting one of those or not. He's like, I'm probably going to have an assistant in this. And would you like that job? And I knew as soon, like, there was 2 ways that conversation could have gone because the band was kind of doing its thing. But if he had been like, hey, do you want to come on as a producer? You know what I mean? And like, this will be our business and this and that. I would have been like, oh, okay, this is something to seriously consider. But the second he was like, do you want to come be my assistant? I'm like, dude, I've been with you for 5 years. I'm not going to just switch to another version of the same job just at a studio. You know what I mean? There was no mobility. It was like, do you want to come do the same thing, but officially? You know what I mean? And so I was like, I think it's probably time, because I'm going to be gone a lot, that we find somebody more permanent who's not in a band, who's kind of doing its thing. And he was very cool about it. And like, I found his new assistant. And then I hired his new assistant like the day I was moving. Like I didn't tell him that I was just leaving LA. And I was like, all right, well, I'm out. Here's your new assistant. Have fun. And that was, you know what I mean? That was the last professional interaction. I saw him over the summer when we were back doing the album in LA. But no, it was great. He was totally fine with it. And I think everybody's bosses were pretty cool about it. I think Kyle has the only boss who wasn't cool with it, but Kyle has a great quitting story where like it was right before this Menzingers tour and he had asked for the time off and they knew he was in a band and he's taken time off before. And I don't mean to steal his story, but it's such a good story. I hope he's okay with it. I won't name any names or anything, but he like walked into work like 3 days before we were supposed to leave for tour. And his boss was like, hey, what's this time off? I haven't approved this. And we're talking like, not just like a week, we're talking like 8 weeks off. And his boss is like, I haven't approved this. And he's like, well, it's my band. We're going on the biggest tours of our career. And she's like, well, I'm not approving it. And he's like, all right, well, here are my keys. And he just quit. And I was so proud of him because he like actually likes his job. But it was great. It's such a great story. Like, I wish I could have had that story.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so Dazed and Confused.
Yeah. Right. It's so good. So yeah, that he was the most, he was the second most reason to lose his job. And then Ruben lost his job while we were on tour, and then everything shut down. So he's just, doing delivery driving right now as much as he can to survive. I mean, we're all just like trying to survive.
So Kyle is the most punk member of Spanish Love Songs.
I hate when you say it like that. I mean, I guess it hurts me to say. Yeah, no, that's like the most punk rock. I was all professional and like gave notice and helped him find my replacement.
Dylan, thanks so much. That's such an incredible story.
Oh yeah, of course, man. Thank you. Like I was telling you on email, I was so excited that you asked me to do this. I love this idea, and I love your podcast, and I constantly am upset that I didn't think of it first.
Simple ideas.
No, it's good. It's good. It's fun.
Thanks so much, Dylan.
Yeah, of course.
I've been working all day for me mate on the side, running around like a blue-ass fly. I've been working all day for me mate. Every bleeding minute I've been on the go, up and down the ladder like a fiddler's elbow. I've been working all day for me mate. Waiting for tomorrow at 10:30 when I sign up, but until then I've been working all day for me mate.
This is a Mighty Media podcast.